Hi, I'm Amelia Brave, and this is UX Night School. '61, and I was raised with this very anti-communist just rhetoric in my house, and one of the things that I always heard from my family growing up is like, oh, the secret ballot is really important. So the secret ballot is, only in America, it's important. You can vote and nobody knows how you voted. And, nobody can, and that this is an important thing. And I've always felt really strongly about, the secrecy of ballots, and also just that it's none of my business how other people voted, that, or if other people voted, which is really hard, like when we're facing major elections. But I was going into my neighborhood public library on Monday with my daughter to pick up a book that she had put on hold, and a guy, as we were walking in, he was like, he had his ballot in his hand. He was like, "Can you put my ballot in the ballot box?" And he had a dog with him. He didn't want to take his dog into the library. I was like, "No, like absolutely not. Like I'm not my hand is not touching your ballot. I'm not a postal worker. I'm not." Which I was very surprised that I felt so strongly about that. But yeah, so that was an interesting sort of ethical rabbit hole that I put myself down this week.
It's interesting that he would ask you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, so if there's anyone who's not in Oregon or doesn't know, Oregon has different sorts of elections so that we solely vote by mail. But if you miss the deadline or if you don't want to pay for the stamp, you can drop your ballot at ballot boxes. There's one by the McDonald's in the Hollywood district in Northeast Portland. And then there's some in libraries. So, but this has meant that voting is not sort of confined to voting booths. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen folks like have like voting parties at bars where they all fill out their ballots, and that really puts me on edge too. Natalie says she always does it part of a ritual during elections, walk to the library. Yeah.
That's really interesting because so I was reading this article in the New Yorker about basically how the paper ballot came to be. And like for a really long time, you either brought your own ballot. It would be provided to you by by like a political party, or you would just vote by voice, or by, I don't know, sticking a pea in a hat or something.
Oh.
So the idea of a secret ballot is actually only about a couple hundred years old.
It's understandable, but still, I'm, I was convinced as a young child that the secret ballot was very important, and I still believe it.
Yeah.
And
people would vote with different colored rocks, right? In the past,
yeah.
I mean, you saw clearly somebody picked the black rock, or when they were handing it in, it wasn't like they could just sleight of hand it and drop it into the basket. So
it's true, and all systems, have affordances for things like snooping on other people. This is the, it's like the number one use case for privacy violations is just snooping.
So I have a kind of related, also voting related ethical situation that I encountered, also involving technology. which is that I had downloaded this app that I had read about as, a way to basically, as a way to get out the vote. This app exists to, the idea of it is that you contact people who are already in your contacts list, who are registered to vote, and then encourage them to vote. So I downloaded this app, and so I did not realize that another one of the capabilities of this app is that, so it takes everybody in your contacts list, and it tells you which elections they voted in. Obviously it can't tell you how they voted, but it also tells you who's registered as a Democrat and who's registered as a Republican.
Yeah.
Which is, it's from, I guess, because I looked this up, I was like, this feels a little invasive, and that it's, from public record, but used in a way that people, so I'm getting information about my coworker, information that people, are registered maybe in a different way than they've presented themselves, or, have divulged to me, personally, and that I feel like they would probably not necessarily want me to know. And, I could have just kind of put it away, but I did go down the rabbit hole of looking to see, because like you were saying, curiosity and snooping, it was really interesting, but it felt like a lot of power. And one of those examples of where it's, it's legal, but I think most people, when they register, register to vote, they're not thinking about, somebody, my coworker might might download an app and know how I'm registered to vote in the future. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think oh, go ahead, Jeff.
So I would have never thought that it would be available to be public knowledge, to be printed or presented to anybody who downloads an app. I'm very surprised to hear that.
Yeah. That's really surprising, because like I know like whether or not you voted is a matter of public record, but I didn't realize that your party affiliation was too.
Yep. Yeah. It's also like there's a lot of fascinating things going on here. So there's a database that I think powers the app that you were talking about, Kim, called Voter Action Network. So it's called VAN. And it is like, there's a lot of information there, and there's a lot of like detailed demographic information, and all of it is public record. But yet it's information that we haven't had access to in the same ways before. So party affiliation is public record. I registered in Oregon. I usually, and in states where I've lived where you weren't required to. So in Texas, as in Oregon, you have to register with a party in order to cast votes in primaries. But in Washington, I believe it's not the case. But I often register as an independent, just because I'm like, unless I have to, because I don't want that to be on record. But here in Oregon, I registered as part of the Working Families Party, and I had a dude I was dating, like right after I got a divorce, say to me, I was like, "Oh, I saw you're registered as Working Families," and I was like, "What the heck?" Like, or like he was an activist, and he worked in like local politics, and would say things like, "Oh, you didn't pay your arts tax," which is a city tax.
Oh, that's rude. Sorry.
Oh yeah, it was a total red flag. But I was in a very vulnerable place, and anyway, that's the overshare of the evening. But I think there's a lot of contention that we need to have with like our ideas of what democracy is and how it plays out in our day-to-day. So That's exciting. Oh, all right. Well, anyone else want to, have
I-
anything else to share? Yeah.
Well, we had something at my work, like,
Mhm.
I think it was a week ago, and it was a somewhat uncomfortable conversation that happened between two coworkers about how to refer to uh, correctly to ethnic groups or ethnicity. And somebody used, offhand comment, used the term Little Mexico. And I mean, it was just like a side comment. And then it really offended somebody that they would use that term, Little Mexico, Little Italy. And
Mhm.
there was like a little bit of uneasiness. And I think it would have benefited from us having a conversation about it, not necessarily what, and what perspectives different people had. But as anything else in the work environment, people kind of like scurried back to their cube and pretended it didn't happen. So I don't know. I think it's important to have this because like not everybody has background. Not everybody, knows whether or not something could be potentially offensive to other people, and it could just be lack of exposure, and it's not malicious at all. So, but I don't know. I thought there was a missed opportunity there.
Oh yeah, I am a big believer in productive conflict. I
Yeah.
and living in the Pacific Northwest for the past 20 years, like this has made me like
No, we compete in the passive aggressive
oh,
Olympics.
definitely, yeah.
So yeah.